A sniping match too, huh? I mean, how many tries should I give when I get to the sniper, guys? One shot, one try, two tries. I want to know how many tries can I do before y'all leaving. I know at some point you'll be like, man, this guy can't snipe for shit. I'm gonna go watch Netflix. Netflix.
Yeah.
Somebody took it. Forget it, bro. We're back here.
Now, men, you are the first Negro tankers to ever fight in the American Army. I would never have asked for you if you weren't good. I have nothing but the best in my army. Everyone has their eyes on you and is expecting great things from you. Don't let them down. And damn you, don't let me down!
Lieutenant General George S. Patton needed trained tankers during World War II.
What's with that look of yours? Don't act like you don't know me!
As the 761st Tank Battalion.
We wanted to prove, not only to us, up to the world, we were the best tank outfit over there.
Rejected by a racist military, black soldiers engaged in battle on two fronts, fighting for their right to...
Read, nigga! Read!
Well,
Read, nigga! Read!
wearing the same uniform, fighting for the same cause, for freedom, justice for all. But yet, we couldn't enjoy this freedom that I was fighting for.
These black soldiers who displayed determination and courage in the battlefields of Europe became the spiritual founding fathers of the civil rights movement that would forever change America. Today, the United States Army is fully integrated. Black and white soldiers share the same barracks and fight side by side. Their lives depend on the trust and respect they have for one another. But at the onset of World War II, blacks are treated like second-class soldiers. They live in segregated barracks and fight in segregated units. Most black soldiers are relegated to labor positions instead of combat. The military brass believe blacks are inferior and lack the courage of white soldiers.
In 1940, the military position was based on the 1925 Army War College study, which said blacks are cowards and blacks are inferior. It was the same old story.
These attitudes had no basis in history. Blacks had distinguished themselves fighting for the United States since the Revolutionary War, when an honored black soldier, Crispus Attucks, became a celebrated American legend. Blacks fought valiantly in the Civil War. The Buffalo Soldiers were integral figures in the story of the American West. And in the Spanish-American War, blacks were on the front lines. But when the United States entered World War I, blacks encountered a wall of bigotry.
Woodrow Wilson, overt racist, did not want blacks to fight in World War I. Poorly trained National Guard units, black National Guard units, were the only black regiments sent as combat troops to Europe. The rest of the black troops sent were labor troops. These black combat troops were given to the French by Woodrow Wilson so that they would not bear arms for America. They fought under the French flag. The French were desperate and grateful to have them. They had generals and officers who were black in the French army, and they were quite mystified by the American attitude towards their own troops.
The morning hours of December 7th, 1941, propel America into war. A stunned nation watches as Japanese bombers annihilate Pearl Harbor. President Roosevelt declares December 7th a date to live on in infamy. Patriotic zeal explodes throughout the nation. Young men sign up in droves for military duty, including thousands of black men. The black community demands that African Americans serve in combat alongside white soldiers. Ironically, blacks are not wanted to fight against Hitler's racist policies. America considers this a war only white men could fight.
Future Senator Robert Byrd wrote a letter to the most racist member of the Senate saying he would rather see America lose the war and he would rather die himself than fight side by side with a black man.
But the black community has one powerful ally. Eleanor Roosevelt is an ardent supporter of equal rights. She believes that black Americans have the right to fight for their country and openly supports their cause. She goes to an Army airfield to prove her point.
And then she said, I would like to go for a ride, go for a spin in one of these planes. And so they got the white pilot to come to give her a spin around the field. And she said, no, I want to fly with that man right over there, a black man.
Her husband, President Roosevelt, cannot afford to have his own battle with the military when the country is at war. A compromise is reached, allowing the formation of token black combat units, but black soldiers remain segregated. Still, black Americans are swept along with the fever of the nation.
It was the thing of the day, as the saying goes. You know, everybody wanted to go to war or volunteer for the country.
So I went down to Whitehall Street, told him I'd like to volunteer. He said, where would you like to go in? I said, the Air Force. He said, well, they don't take blacks in the Air Force. They said we didn't have the brains to do it, which to me was stupid for people to think like this.
But they did have something, a tank outfit. I said, no walking? So he said, yes, it's a mechanized unit. Not even know what a mechanized unit was. So I said, okay, that's good by me.
For the first time in history, black men are trained in armored warfare. The new recruits board a troop train from Camp Uptown in New York to Fort Knox, Kentucky. A young E.G. McConnell gets his first taste of Southern hospitality.
And as the train was winding through the hills of Kentucky, I saw a bunch of hillbillies out there. Some of them had guns in their hands and were waving at the train. But orders came down for we blacks riding in the forward part of the train, the first two cars, to pull our shades down. And finally I decided to go into the vestibule of a white car, and this conductor caught up with me. "What do you want here, boy?" Well, I said, "I'm going back here. I want to find out how come we have to pull our shades down and no one has pulled their shades down in this car with all the whites on." He says, "Well, I'll tell you, it's for your own safety. There have been occasions where they've fired with guns onto the forward cars in which the blacks were, and it's just for your own safety."
The newly formed tank unit is called the 758th Tank Battalion. All the enlisted soldiers are black, but the higher rank officers are white.
I was in the 12th Armored Division at Camp Camel, Kentucky, and a major from the Armored Force Headquarters at Fort Knox came down, and he interviewed every second lieutenant on the post. And he said, "Would you be willing to serve with black tankers?" Well, of course, you know how things travel on an Army post. Before the first day was over, everybody knew that question was coming up. So I thought about it, and I decided that it would be wise for some of us who were not prejudiced to volunteer so they didn't get a bunch of racists to work with, because some racists, I thought, might be delighted to get a chance to run them down.
The 758th Tank Battalion is transferred to Camp Claiborne, Louisiana. To accommodate the new recruits, a new unit, the 761st Tank Battalion, is formed. It is the second of 3 black tank outfits created by the military.
Oh, the training was vigorous. You was able to take a M1 rifle, take it down, almost blindfold, and put it back together again.
Oh, I loved it. I was like a little kid with a new toy. I rode motorcycles, I rode jeeps, I rode the tanks, half tracks. It was a thrill to me. And we would get in a tank and maybe be the last tank coming in. So you put that thing in 5th gear, you'd be flying. And then when you get down to the motor pool, you come flying in the motor pool and you pull one lever and the tank just slide right under the.
And I love to shoot the gun. I have a affinity about gunpowder. I love to smell gunpowder.
We took it very seriously, and we sit down at night and we go over problems to cultivate us so that we know when we have to go out on a mission what we have to do and why we have to do it, and try to do it the best of our ability and better than anyone else, because we had to really prove ourselves.
Life in the barracks is strictly segregated. The black soldiers have their own barracks, dining room, and PX office. Blacks from the North, for the first time, begin to experience blatant bigotry.
All the black troops were at one end of the post, and the rest of the post was white troops. They had their own PX. On the picture show, the whites could go 6 nights a week. The blacks could only go 1 night a week.
Colored soldiers are expected to sit in the back of the bus.
And if you went to the back of the bus, if you sat down, and if a white person was on the bus and didn't have a seat, you did not take that seat. They took the seat wherever they sat. You had to stand.
You could be beaten up on the streets, or you could be shot or killed by a white person, and nothing will be done about it. That's just the way the law was. There was no law. Half of your sheriffs, deputies, and policemen was Ku Klux Klan.
In September 1943, the 761st is transferred to Camp Hood, Texas. What awaits them is more humiliation. German soldiers imprisoned at Camp Hood have more rights and privileges than the black Americans.
German soldiers, they were in charge of the warehouses. If you went there to pick up supplies, that German soldier, if he was an officer, he would tell you things you could take and what you couldn't take, and you could not argue with him. He was in charge.
They made fun of us, the German soldiers, feeling that they were of the superior race.
He says, how could our country do this to us? Let these German prisoners
have more authority, tell you what you can do and what you can't do.
Black officers are subjected to the same discrimination as the soldiers. Those who fight back face punishment. When boarding a bus, Second Lieutenant John Roosevelt Robinson refuses to take a seat in the back.
And the bus driver, looked back and noticed this, and he stopped the bus. He went right back and told him he will move to the rear of the bus right now.
Lieutenant Robinson will not be intimidated. He will not move to the back of the bus.
And so this bus driver just turned red, went back to his seat, called on the phone, called the MP station, says, I have an uppity type of Negro here.
Lieutenant Robinson is arrested for disobedience and put on trial. All charges eventually are dismissed. Robinson leaves the battalion and ends his military career. June 6, 1944. Allied forces invade Normandy, the largest invasion in the history of war. The Americans use their most experienced units to penetrate Hitler's stronghold in Europe, but one of the best fighting units is not there. The 761st remains in America.
We wanted to fight. We got tired of just training, and it didn't seem if it was going any place.
And there had never been in the history of the United States Army that blacks have ever fought in armor. And that's why I felt that we would never go overseas. They just said they could train us in armor, but never accept us to go and fight.
But their luck would soon change. Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr. of the 3rd U.S. Army is back in America seeking replacements for the front lines of Europe.
We were told that Patton had been looking at us, and he had observed the maneuvers from a distance and the way those tanks were being handled. He wanted to know what outfit it was.
On the battlefields of Europe, casualties are mounting at an alarming rate. The Army is desperate for replacements. 3 days later, the battalion is caught by surprise. They are going overseas to join General George S. Patton's 3rd Army. The 761st is going to war. August 1944. The men of the 761st set sail for England. There is no segregation in Europe. The British treat the tankers as respected allies and friends. This acceptance infuriates some white soldiers who spread vicious rumors about the black Americans.
And the word got around back to us that the American soldiers was telling English people that don't socialize with us. We'll rape their children, we rape their women, and we got tailed, the whole bit.
And they were waiting to see these tails. So, you're interested and you talk to them and they talk about the tail. You says, well, it'll come out about 10 o'clock. All right. And you talk to them and you keep the tail. And then maybe a few minutes after 10, he said, oh, my God, what's my tail just went back in.
After 1 month in England, the 761st is ordered to the front lines in France. As they travel through France, local citizens celebrate their arrival and cheer them on to victory.
They come out, they cheer us, say, comrade, comrade, comrade. When we get down, the girls will come and hug you, comrade, comrade, welcome you, welcome you. And it was a great release, you know. We felt very good that somebody over there liked us.
On November 2nd, General George Patton personally inspects the 761st Tank Battalion. His visit leaves a lasting impression.
And we heard his jeep coming. I stress my peripheral vision without moving my head far to my left to see that jeep coming down the road and the 3 stars on the front of the jeep, knowing this is the greatest general of all times. And he climbed up onto the scout car, and he looked at us from left to right, back and forth. And he said to us, I sent for you.
I sent for you
because I heard you were good.
Now, men, you are the first Negro tankers to ever fight in the American Army. I would never have asked for you if you weren't good. I have nothing but the best in my army. I don't care what color you are, so long as you go up there and kill those kraut sons of bitches.
Children, old people,
Children,
church
old people, church
You understand
people.
me?
You understand me? I want
you to shoot up every
goddamn thing you see.
thing you see.
Everyone has their eyes on you and is expecting great things from you. Most of all, your race is looking forward to your success. Don't let them down. And damn you, don't let me down.
The man was a military genius for leadership, and so no question about that. And we were all quite proud to be in his army.
Oh, it made us feel good because he didn't have nothing but the best. And he told us, I have nothing but the best in my army. So we figured that this was an honor for him to want us to be there to fight.
The battalion enters battle. Their objective, to liberate French towns occupied by the Germans. That means securing more than 24 towns held by enemy troops. The 761st is ready to meet the challenge and prove themselves as soldiers.
On my first day of combat, we must have fired 150 rounds of high explosive shells into this town. We almost leveled it. And then we moved in with the infantry.
And we were rolling through, going forward, shooting, and through my periscope I could see these bodies laying on the road in front of us.
2 minutes in combat is a lifetime. More things can happen in 2 minutes than can happen to you in a lifetime.
Heavy artillery greets the 761st as they circle the town of Moorville. Again, the men prove their abilities as they enter a flaming inferno.
And it was hot. I mean, when I say hot, I mean it was a lot of Germans and 88s, the whole works. I saw so many tanks and so many of our fellas getting killed in Moorville. It was hell. Moorville was hell.
They liberate several towns for the Allies, despite stiff resistance from the Germans. The 761st is relentless, a company made up of exceptional soldiers determined to win. First Sergeant Samuel Turley risks his own life to save his men when his tank is attacked.
He jumped out. He had the tank's machine gun. He fired that from his hip. And he provided so much accurate fire that the anti-tank gunners had to actually stop what they were doing and flee their tank. And this provided an opportunity for the tankers to escape.
Sergeant Warren Creasy's resolve to destroy the enemy earns him the reputation as the baddest man in the 761st.
And he would stick his head out of the turret of the tank, which is something most of us didn't do in combat. He would stick his head out of the turret of the tank and use a 50 caliber machine gun.
He wasn't scared about anything. And his word was he wanted to kill as many Germans as he could. Just let me know where they're at and I'm get them. And that's the way he felt. He was fearless.
Creasy took on 3 German tanks all by himself. He just took them all, moving and shooting, you know.
They were extraordinary. They were excellent tankers, typical of every black unit, combat unit in World War II, because these men had to be special.
The tankers and the infantry defeat each German unit they encounter. Color that once divided the Americans now evaporates on the battlefields as the soldiers unite in combat.
When we got in combat, all of a sudden everybody had to depend on everybody else to do the job. And we started doing such a good job. When they needed tank support, they would request members of the 761st.
We cleared the path for our infantry. We looked out for them. This was our purpose, and we did it well.
Sergeant Johnny Stevens is severely injured when his tank is struck by enemy fire.
Yeah, I was laying there, and this white sergeant from the 26th Division. He yelled out to me, he says, "Are you hit?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "How bad is it?" I said, "I'm hit hard as hell, just like that." Because blood was streaming all down my combat jacket, you know. Well, he crawled over to where I was. He says, "Can you move?" I said, "Yeah, I can move." I said, "Let's get the hell out of here," just like that, you know. Like a little embankment, and he helped me to get up to this bank, and then he just gave me a shove, and I rolled over on the other side, away from the line of fire. Then he raised up to follow me over, and that's when the German cut him in two with a burp gun.
As the 761st crosses into Germany, they are ordered by General Patton to head north to Belgium. The Germans had launched a surprise attack on Allied forces. The 761st race northward just days before Christmas. They are about to encounter their toughest battle. In late 1944, the 761st is engaged in the biggest counterattack the Nazis have launched since D-Day. In a last desperate gamble, Hitler pushes the relentless Allied advance 40 miles back into Belgium, creating a bulge in their defensive line. It will be known as the Battle of the Bulge. The 761st's mission is to recapture the Belgian town of Tilley. This would prevent the Germans from reaching vital supplies. It is in the dead of winter. The 761st are fighting the cold as well as the enemy.
Your hands were cold, your feet were cold, you were hungry, you're tired.
We was coming down the road and you could see all the dead soldiers on the side of the road. It was something that you wouldn't want to see again, you know. And there was a lot of firepower up there at the Battle of the Buds. A lot of people lost their lives at the Battle of the Buds.
We got through Gillette. Then on the other side of Gillette is where we would hit this open field going towards the woods.
And we saw infantry dropping their rifles and running back, scared.
This German tank, Tiger tank, was stashed in the woods somewhere. And he shot and he disabled my tank.
We couldn't move. And we couldn't come out the right way with the tank. We couldn't come out the turn. The only way we could maybe get away is come through the escape hatch at under the bottom of the tank. And McBurney and I and Winston, we crawled 5,000 yards in the snow to get away from that. And them Germans shot at everything, shot 88s at us, mortars, everything they could throw at us, trying to kill us.
I'm ready to give up, and because I was tired of crawling and shooting, I said, well, this is it for as I was concerned. And I figured I've had it. I done bought the ticket. And Smitty said, man, you can't stop now. You got to keep going. Remember we was at the Savoy, we was dancing?
It was a dance place. We used to go there on Thursdays and Sunday night dancing. To Lionel Hampton, Count Basie, people like that.
We got to get back to Savoy. I said, damn the Savoy.
And he said, you must be crazy. You talking about the Savoy ball and going dancing, these people trying to kill us. But that's what I would do. That's why I didn't think about what they were trying to do. I just want to get away. I said, I want to get back right to the Savoy.
And because of him, I kept going.
And that's where we crawled 5,000 yards and fell into a ditch where there were a lot of dead soldiers.
And we made it. The P-38 came out of nowhere. I don't know where he came. And then he knocked out the Tiger tank. And then he dipped his wings and then took off.
Hitler's last stand turns into a monumental error. Thousands of German soldiers are killed during the Battle of the Bulge. The tide has now turned against Hitler's army. Without their supplies, the Germans face inevitable defeat.
After Chile, we just felt that this was it. Because the back of the German army had been broken now. It was broken. See, when the 761st cut that supply line, that was it. You see, if an army can't get supplies, he can't fight.
The 761st far exceeds the expectations of all. They have proven themselves as exemplary soldiers and win the respect of the army.
The Battle of the Bulge was the turning point of the American soldier realized that black soldiers could fight as well as the white soldiers in World War, in armor or whatever, infantry or whatever. That's when they realized it. And from then on, they gave us that recognition.
The 761st is given new orders. They are to break through the Siegfried Line, a wall of concrete and steel fortifications built to protect the German border. The fighting is fierce. The Germans are still putting up stiff resistance toward the Allied advance. After 72 hours, the battalion, along with the 103rd Infantry Division, break through. They are one of the first battalions to crack the line and enter the heart of Germany. Germans by the thousands surrender to the American soldiers. But there are those unwilling to give themselves up to a black man.
And I went in this house, I had my pistol in my hand. Then I saw this big fella, about 6 foot something, behind the door. And I noticed he was had a black uniform on. So I swung around, slammed the door, and stuck my pistol up under his chin. I said, surrender. Oh, he said, I don't surrender to you niggers. And when he said that, I slapped him in the mouth with the .45, and teeth jumped all over. Now, see, if he said, I don't surrender to you American soldiers, I would have been fine with me. I would have taken his gun. But when he said, I don't surrender to you niggers, and spoke perfect English, that's when I slapped him in the mouth. That was it.
On May 2nd, 1945, the 761st Tank Battalion reaches Germany's border with Austria. They cross through Austria to wait for their Russian allies to join them. The men of the 761st who experienced racism in the South and the devastation of war are unprepared for what they are about to witness. As the 761st travels through Austria, they are unaware of what lies ahead of them. Hidden in these forests are Hitler's notorious concentration camps.
We were coming down this road through a forest, and the open field, and the big fence, and a gate. I told the driver to go through the gate, and we went, knocked the gate down, and went into camp.
I was sitting up in my tank, you know, looking, because I didn't even know what it was until one of my platoon came up and said, "Sarge, so you know what this is?" I said, "No, what is it?" He said, "They say this is a concentration camp."
I just stared with my mouth open, because they didn't look human, to be honest with you.
The camps that the 761st arrive at are a living legacy to Hitler's savage vision, the complete annihilation of Europe's Jews. The stories of deportation are as horrific as the camps themselves.
I was 15 when the Germans came in. Eichmann arrived in Budapest with his lieutenants to organize the deportation of Hungarian Jews.
We had a quite nice life until the Nazis invaded, and they put us in cattle wagons, about 100 of us in one cattle wagon. We just had little holes to look out where we were. Sometimes the train stops for hours and hours and hours. It was horrible. We couldn't sleep. We cried. We screamed. We looked out. We wanted to know what's happening with us.
We didn't know where we were, but I remember floodlights and these huge guards with the big dogs all around. And there was a terrible smell in the air. It smelled like burning flesh. The family was split. Men and women were split. And this is the last time I saw my family being marched off. To the left, my grandparents and my mother with the baby in her arm, and my two younger brothers, and my aunt. And they were instantly marched into the gas chambers right from this platform.
We arrived in Mauthausen during the day, and then it was men, half dead. They looked like skeletons. When we went outside of that barracks, we saw the dead people, like hundreds of them. Hundreds of them.
I'm now a skeleton, skin and bone. Every part of your body is hurting you because you're laying on wooden planks and you have no padding on you and there's no mattress, and you've been without food now for a long, long time, and typhus is taking its toll on people. We are infested with lice. You know, dirt is caked in on our bodies. We have a skin like a snake. And this is the condition that the Americans found us when they came into camp.
In one of the most poignant moments of the war, it is the oppressed who will free the persecuted. The 761st Tank Battalion, along with the 71st Infantry, are the first to liberate a camp known as Gunskirchen, a subcamp of the main concentration camp known as Mauthausen. The Nazis are losing the war, but they still persist on carrying out their barbaric goal.
I told the driver to go through the gate, and we went, knocked the gate down, and went into camp. Then the people come out from all over the place. And to look at the site and saw those people.
It made you cry. It made you sick to your stomach. You could count every rib, everything, bones. You know, like you go into an eye place and you see the skeleton hanging. That's what they look like.
Then I just cried for about.
Urine. Stream.
It's my
but resources ran out quickly, and many found themselves scavenging through the camp for any scrap of food to try and supplement their starvation. Those with cash or items to trade would seek out stores run by Confederate guards and other prisoners to purchase goods like flour, eggs, wheat, peaches, sour beer, and
with so many at Lockheed.
Never let go.
Brace yourself for the unsettling story of one of the darkest period.
I walked across.
These guys are just steps. Each one a step on my long and winding path to becoming a true monster. Read, nigga! Read!
of yours. Don't act like you don't know me!
American Civil War prison camps were operated by both the Union and the Confederacy to handle the 409,000 soldiers captured during the war from 1861 to 1865. The Record and Pension Office in 1901 counted 211,000 Northerners who were captured. In 1861–63 most were immediately paroled. After the parole exchange system broke down in 1863, about 195,000 went to prison camps. Some tried to escape but few succeeded. By contrast, 464,000 Confederates were captured, many in the final days, and 215,000 imprisoned. Over 30,000 Union and nearly 26,000 Confederate prisoners died in captivity. Just over 12% of the captives in northern prisons died, compared to 15.5% for southern prisons. R. Pickenpaugh, Roger. Captives in Blue: The Civil War Prisons of the Confederacy, 2013.
Are the first to liberate a camp known as Gunskirchen, a subcamp of the main concentration camp known as Mauthausen. The Nazis are losing the war, but they still persist on carrying out their barbaric goal.
I told the driver to go through the gate, and we went, knocked the gate down, and went into the camp. Then the people come out from all over the place. And to look at the site and saw those people.
It made you cry. It made you sick to your stomach. You could count every rib, everything, bones. You know, like you go into an eye place and you see the skeleton. Hanging, that's what they look like.
Then I just cried for about 5 minutes. I cried because I just couldn't believe it.
The stank with these soldiers, the black soldiers sitting on the turret, and they were absolutely horrified. I'll never forget their eyes were like saucers because what they saw here was something that they would have never seen under any battlefield. conditions.
But to see these people to be treated like that, and we, you figure you only thought about slavery doing to black people. And I didn't think that something like that would happen today. I didn't know that the Germans were that evil to want to do this to people.
And suddenly, a big black American soldier came down with a bicycle, with a woman's bicycle. This was the first time ever I seen a black person. I never seen one before. And he came right front of me and gave me the bicycle and the big bag of chocolate. I think this was the first time I was happy in many, many, many years.
Well, I felt very thankful, really, towards the liberators, because without them, we wouldn't have made it. Had they been hours later or days later, many more of us would not have made it, and I'll be forever grateful to them.
So, I don't know. It's hard to explain unless you experience it yourself.
I do what needs to be done. What do you expect from a true freak?
It's very hard.
The war officially ends. Allied soldiers are cheered by jubilant and thankful nations. The men of the 761st are ready to return home as honored Americans. But the racism they fought to defeat is still waiting for them in America.
We had fought for the right to vote, for freedom, and then we come back and we got the same old crap.
Black soldiers came back, many of whom did not receive the recognition and the medals that they should have won.
Right after the war, nobody talked about us or heard about the 761st. Nothing.
William McBurney, dressed in his Army uniform, encounters racism on a trip to the South.
I was getting ready to go to the counter, and this white man came in, and he walked right in front of me. And I said, wait a minute, I was here first. And he said, nigga, you wait till I get served. Now, this was in 46, in uniform. That's when I felt, said, what the hell I go overseas for and do all this to come back to this for?
And that was the hurting part. Knowing that you have to go back to the same thing.
The attack on a black veteran in the South is the last straw for new American President Harry Truman. In 1948, he ends segregation in the military.
Recent events in the United States and abroad have made us realize that
Break.
Hey all, I'm John Avlon, and this is Reality Check on the extremist beat. America is a nation of immigrants. Unless you're descended from indigenous people, your family came here from somewhere else. And chances are they were discriminated against at some point. And that's a crucial point to bring some clarity to our immigration debates. Because every new wave of immigration has encountered some bigoted resistance. And interestingly, even our definition of what it means to be white has changed over time. Let's start right back after the Revolutionary War. Like, few people thought that a democracy could exist in a nation this large, let alone with English and French, Protestants and Catholics living side by side. After all, they'd been slaughtering each other for centuries in Europe. And while most folks spoke English, some spoke Dutch in upstate New York, French in parts of what's now Vermont, and German outside Philadelphia. in a place called Germantown. And this irritated founding father Benjamin Franklin, who wrote, "Why should Pennsylvania, founded by the English, become a colony of aliens who will shortly be so numerous as to Germanize us instead of our Anglifying them, and will never adopt our language or customs any more than they can acquire our complexion." Sound familiar? It should, because all the heraldry of anti-immigrant anxiety is there. The concerns about cultural change, resentment over perceived resistance to assimilation, and a fixation on whiteness, directed at Germans. But of course, the biggest minority population in the United States at the time were forced immigrants of African descent, brought here as slaves, who made up as much as 20% of the nation's population in the first census taken in 1790, making up a majority of the population in states like South Carolina. From 1820 to 1845, America averaged between 10,000 to 100,000 new immigrants a year in a country with a population of 17 million. But between 1840 and 1854, almost 3 million immigrants arrived, primarily from Ireland, which was suffering from the potato famine at the time. And this sparked the first major nativist political party in American history, the Anti-Immigrant American Party, better known as the Know-Nothings. Within a few short years, they elected 100 congressmen and 8 governors on a platform that included forced deportation of foreign-born beggars and criminals, mandatory Bible reading in schools, and a ban on all Catholics from holding public office. But Abraham Lincoln abhorred the Know-Nothing Party, and immigration massively increased as a result of legislation when he was president during the Civil War. In the late 1860s, Chinese workers arrived in the West to work on the Transcontinental Railroad. But 2 decades later, that open door slammed shut in the form of the Chinese Exclusion Act, which was the first law to restrict immigration. The pendulum swing toward increased immigration soon set in on the East Coast, though, with the opening of Ellis Island in 1892 in the shadow of Lady Liberty, which welcomed about 1.3 million people to America in 1907 alone. Many of these were immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe, including members of my own family. But soon, a backlash began brewing. It's a backlash that began at the turn of the last century, when Congress in 1912 debated restrictions on waves of immigrants from Italy and debated what it meant to really be white. We'll discuss that with Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Jose Antonio Vargas, who went public with his own undocumented status a decade ago. That's next. In 1912, according to account in Smithsonian Magazine, the House Committee on Immigration debated over whether Italians could be considered full-blooded Caucasians, and immigrants coming from Southern and Eastern Europe were considered biologically and culturally less intelligent. In the wake of the Second World War, however, America resolved to open up to refugees fleeing fascism and communism. And in 1965, President Lyndon Baines Johnson signed a new immigration law, abolishing the old race-based quota system. But of course, our national love-hate debate over immigration hasn't stopped. President Ronald Reagan signed a bipartisan amnesty bill that was torched by conservatives who increasingly demonized undocumented workers from Mexico. Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama tried and failed to get Congress to pass immigration reforms. And of course, Donald Trump stoked anti-immigrant sentiment with his calls to build a wall and ban immigration from Muslim nations, even infamously kicking off his presidential campaign with this riff.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
Over the past few years, we've seen anti-immigrant rhetoric turn into violence sometimes, including mass shootings in El Paso and the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, where shooters espoused something called the Great Replacement Theory, amid a drumbeat of right-wing anxiety about America becoming a majority-minority nation.
That I will support and defend the Constitution.
But still, America remains a beacon for immigrants around the world. There were a record 44 million immigrants living in the United States in 2018, making up nearly 14% of the nation's population. 14% of members of Congress are either immigrants or the children of immigrants. America remains a nation of immigrants, and we continue to wrestle with a hatred of immigrants. Joining me to discuss this and more is the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Jose Antonio Vargas, who wrote a famous 2011 essay in which he publicly disclosed his status as an undocumented immigrant.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. And I have to say, like, what you just said was probably the most succinct summary of the anti-immigrant history of this country. I've been in this country, I've been living here 28 years. I have probably seen more of America than most Americans. I visited like 49 states in the past decade now. And sometimes I wonder, you know when people say that we have a broken immigration system, right? I don't think that anymore. Because when you say that you broke something, like when I broke my ankle, it was an accident. I tripped, right? This feels deliberate. It feels like this is exactly how it's supposed to function. We're supposed to have an underclass, working class of people whose labor we depend on, but we don't want to give them any rights. This is where storytelling and telling your story is really important, right? Because no one can argue with the fact that I was born in the Philippines. I was sent here when I was 12. I found out I was here illegally when I was 16. This is where I went to school. This is where I built a career. This is where I pay taxes. This is my home, right? The most surreal thing is the school district that I attended as a kid ended up naming this elementary school
Which,
after
by
me.
the way, is amazing, and
crazy.
congratulations. That's one of the coolest things I've ever heard.
Well, you got to love America, though.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a green card. I don't have a U.S. passport, but there's Jose Antonio Vargas Elementary School 3 miles from where I grew up. For me, the lack of information that people have on this issue, the lack of facts. I mean, look, facts matter. I'm saying this as a journalist who happens to be undocumented. Facts matter. But when it comes to this issue, we don't want facts, right? We want to kind of lean in on what we don't know. There's a lot of just fear in general of what people don't know. And to me, in a country where unless you're Native American or African American who was forced to come here, you're an immigrant from somewhere. And I remember very early on when people would say to me, my great-great-grandparents did it the right way. Like John, for example, you talked about Ellis Island, right? I can't tell you how many people say to me, oh, but they did it the right way. And then I'd follow up like any journalist would. So what does that mean, the right way? Like, what happened? What was the process? Was there a green card? Was there a visa? No. So this idea that there was this legal way is a myth that we've created, right? During the Ellis Island era.
That's a fascinating perspective itself, coming from a family who resembles that remark on a number of different levels. And incidentally, I should say that one of my grandparents came through legally via Buenos Aires with his family when he was 3 years old in Ellis Island, briefly detained. The other stowed away on a ship after his entire family died in the Spanish influenza epidemic. So he came here questionably at the very least, which just goes to the essential complexity of our family stories that we simplify. And then we try to make ourselves virtuous compared to current generations of immigrants.
And I actually think, at Defiant American, part of what we do is how do we get more specific, right? How do we actually say, wait a second, when did you come here again? What laws were in place? Do you know the story of that immigrant that you're talking about? What were they actually escaping? Where are they coming from?
And like anything, what you're saying is the power of stories, our own family stories, the power of history to bring perspective to our current debates, that itself can build bridges and tear down walls and remove that sense that, well, my family's been here for 7 generations, which I heard at Tea Party rallies all the time when folks were protesting Barack Obama, and to start using those stories to really start making our common roots as an immigrant society more apparent.
if this land, without crowding, yours, which of those unborn children would then be called African? Yours, or mine, children would then be called African. Which of those unborn children would then be called African? Yours or mine?
I think the only thing that
Every single morning in the wrong, but it is very nice.
I know thy works and tribulation.
This is
when we look
and it's a drug
नमस्कार.